Well, hey, welcome everybody. From what I understand, there's only about 6,285 people here, so that's good. We are going to talk through hardening IT operations. This is actually a topic that's been on my mind personally for a while, and then increasing in the past few months, especially thinking through what does it mean to turn the gaze on ourselves towards security. It's really easy to talk about end users. It's really easy to talk about the other people who aren't being secure enough. And often the reality is that we aren't always maintaining the securest practices ourselves if we're not being careful. And so I want to dive through that. And in many ways, the focus of this is going to lead toward, as in the title, talking about two-factor and beyond. The main reason for that being, quite frankly, I was talking to John Strand and he loved it. So, hey, that's how that goes. We're going to talk through this. We're going to have fun, hopefully. And we're going to do questions and answers and all of that. So with that, brief little about me. If you want to read all those words that are on there, that's kind of what I look like. I also look like what you see on the video. I promise. It's been about 20 years in doing tech stuff overall. There's probably some other stuff that totally make you listen to me, but I'll just present content instead, and you'll probably like it. If you don't, oh well, they'll fire me. I am really proud that I get to be a husband to my beautiful wife and the father of a couple of wonderful girls. I play Ultimate. I play board games. And that, yes, does include backdoors and breaches, which we have an enjoyable time with pretty frequently, actually, at my company, as we talk through security needs. So I work for ArcSource currently, and ArcSource, we are based in the San Francisco Bay Area. We've had the privilege to be recognized a few different times on channel, recognitions and stuff like that, which is cool. We've served a lot of different customers, Windows, Mac, nonprofits, various small businesses of various sizes. So there's been a lot of cool opportunities to talk IT with customers that have a lot of small needs and big needs and needs they don't realize, and then to think through how do we protect them well, how do we protect ourselves in order to protect them. With no further ado, why the focus on hardening IT operations? There's so much other discussion that goes on. There's so much other content regarding different kinds of hacks, different kinds of protections, different kinds of security methods that matter for an organization as we're thinking through business impact analysis and planning for disaster recovery and all these kind of things. So why the focus on IT specifically? For me, it comes from thinking through the cyber landscape as a whole, especially as we are transitioning more and more from on-prem systems to cloud systems, from internally managed teams to external vendors that are helping to do stuff for us. There's a lot of really good stuff happening there. There's also the potential for increased vulnerabilities. We've seen supply chain attacks become a thing in the past couple of years that was not a very big deal before. And now instead we have, something like a VoIP vendor getting compromised just in the past couple of weeks. We have other tools that get compromised. That's a new vulnerability. And that comes in many ways from the way that we do our IT when it comes to IT tools and stuff. There are more personal devices in use and devices in general when it comes to the IT guy with his laptop or his desktop or his phone or his Apple Watch or any number of other things. Internet of Things devices at home. Can they compromise your Nest and get to your corporate operations, et cetera? We also have a false sense of security often. Something is implemented, therefore everything must be fine. And we need to be aware that we can't just turn something on and say we're good to go. The attack surface has gotten larger. It's also gotten easier to attack, especially with cloud systems in place. Those cloud systems can be hit from anywhere. If your system is only internal to your office, then someone has to hit your office in order to get to your system. But when it's on Office 365, they can hit it no matter where they are, and you don't even know they're trying. So you can't track that in the same way. And it's much easier to hit. There's also a increased desire for convenience related to remote work. The more that we have good security measures like two-factor or like other hardening lockdowns in place, the more that people currently are asking for ways around those, because they are an exception case or they have an exception case scenario or whatever else. And as those requests for convenience come into play, some of them are activated and become sources of vulnerabilities and sources of a new attack surface. And then people factors. The ignorance of our technicians at times is real. Like we don't always know what we don't know. And sometimes that leads to an IT operation that's not as hard as we might think it is. On the other hand, technician arrogance is real. Are so smart, we definitely know what we're talking about and no one can tell us otherwise. And when we're wrong, there's a major vulnerability there. Tech fatigue is real. The more that we have new tools, new sources of input, new things to watch out for, more holes in the boat that need to be plugged to stop the bad actors, there are more and more opportunities there for vulnerabilities to be seen as we overlook things potentially. And so we have to be on top of things, track where that might happen. And then techs are high impact targets. And I don't think that this is always acknowledged enough when we think of who are we trying to protect and why. If someone gets into a tech's account, they've got keys to the castle in many cases. They've got admin credentials, they've got admin permissions, they have roles and operations that no one else is going to have in many cases. This also has a particular impact in the MSP industry as well. Some of these things increase. There's an even larger payload for bad actors if they get into MSP tools and thereby get to all the customer base. There's an even higher percentage often of cloud tools. There are directed attacks against the industry as a result. And customer weaknesses can become yours. I was actually talking some with some red team guys at Black Hills recently about this and how there has been the possibility at times of being able to use the tools that are installed in a machine, reverse engineer through those back to the central management system, and thereby be able to compromise the IT firm or a different customer through that or that sort of thing. MSPs have smaller budgets. MSPs have less knowledgeable techs sometimes who have not been through a full career yet, who are just starting and enjoying practicing tech and all that. And they can get super smart, but they also sometimes don't know what system we're actually dealing with. And the need for efficiency drives sharing credentials, sharing systems, et cetera. So whether it's internal IT operations or MSPs, there's a very big need for hardening IT operations as a whole, so that as we try to help others, we make sure that we are healthy too. So that leads us to self-care on the mountain of cybersecurity. And also, by the way, I am no artist. Some of you might already be noticing in the bottom left corner of these images is that lovely little Bing logo. These are AI generated photos. And shout out to Bo Bullock for the idea at Black Hills, because he did that with his own and pointed that out. And I thought that was clever. So, hey, here we are with Eric, the not artist, making slides that actually look kind of cool. But we need to think through IT self-care, hardening. What does that actually look like when we're talking about cybersecurity? When we're talking about the need to have every door covered. You know, when we sit around and we say, hey, you know, can you believe that accounting doesn't want to whatever, right? Secure their system in this way. They don't want to have a password at all. They don't want to have 2FA. They don't want to have individual accounts because they find it so much easier to use a single account. It's easy to sit there and condemn someone else for doing that. They need to be taught and educated under these things. We need to work with them to sort out the needs that are there. But we need to look at ourselves and go, okay, well, am I sharing accounts? Am I finding ways of convenience and efficiency rather than security? Am I actually being secure by default, or am I creating problems? That leads to this reality that as cyber professionals, as IT professionals in general, to whom much is given, much is required. And it is not easy to be secure. It's annoying, actually, many times. The implementation of passwords was in itself annoying back in the day, and everyone got used to it. The implementation of two-factor is annoying currently, and people are slowly getting used to it. But the reality is that as IT professionals, we know better than to skip over these things. We know better than to leave default credentials on a device just because it's easy. We know better than to share accounts just because it's convenient. We know that there are reasons that these things are happening. We still need to do careful risk analysis sometimes of what does or doesn't fit in our operations. But far too often, if we're not careful, that just leads to, well, we need to have security for everyone else, but I'm the exception case, or my operations are the exception case. We need to be pushing for secure by default. We need to ensure that our operations are starting in a place that is aiming at security, not just quick operations, that is aiming at security, not just the latest gadget, that is aiming at security and not just an easier way to do my own job more quickly. So therefore, I say embrace the handcuffs and walk the talk. For example, 2 things. Stop using admin accounts for your daily work. We know that admin accounts can be dangerous. We know admin accounts can be compromised. If you're using an admin account for your daily work, logged in on your computer, find a way to limit it. Sign in as a regular user and have your admin credentials available, or use a privileged access management tool or something like that. Similarly, stop using shared accounts in operations. These are the sorts of things that they do make life harder. They do make logistics more difficult at times, but they also are vital for making sure that we actually are protecting ourselves, protecting our operations, and thereby protecting our people or our customers or our corporations or any other group that we are helping to provide IT for. that all as preface, right? As landscape, as why are we actually here? The attention we're turning to today is two-factor authentication. And I'm saying two-factor rather than multi-factor on purpose. Multi-factor, if you look up the definition of multi, it can include two, but obviously it can go far beyond two. And in some cases, we have true multi-factor where there's 3 or 4 or whatever else possibilities. But in many, many cases, what we're really looking at in the industry as a whole is 2 factors of authentication, right? It's your username, your password, there's your first factor is your password, something you know. And the second factor is some sort of code. Maybe it's texted to you, maybe you have it in your code app. Maybe the system you're working with won't even give you the option of using a code generation app, but it's a code. Or maybe it's a token in some cases, but it's 2 factors. And the danger is if we're limiting to only 2 factors, we're already behind where the industry is moving, in particular the industry of bad actors. Looking at moving to 2FA and beyond, to quote the famous Buzz Lightyear, cyber technologist. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. 2FA is great. If you look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it is listed as one of the mitigation options for helping with a wide variety of attack types. If we were to have this webpage pulled up live right now and scroll down, there's like 15, 20 different TTPs listed there that multi-factor helps deal with. 2-factor is not the source of my topic today because it was a problem. 2-factor is a source of my topic today because we need to keep building on what is a good and useful tool already. We need to use that as a foundation. As we are looking at things in 2023, 2-factor needs to be as default, as assumed in our minds now as having a password was in 1995 or 2000 or whatever. That 2-factor needs to be a base part of our operations because it does take care of a lot of stuff. The reality is that 2FA is not enough. We can also find on the MITRE ATT&CK framework a discussion of multi-factor authentication interception, that there are ways to gain those MFA tokens. There are ways to gain the codes from people, whether it's by social engineering, whether it's by SIM swapping, all these other kind of options that have come up, MFA bypass, or just flat out someone has an exception set up for themselves with Office 365 when they're on their phone and you're able to hack in by changing your browser agent, for example. Those kinds of things, among many more, are part of why 2-factor is not enough. We can't just say, hey, this system's here, we're good to go. The industry of bad actors has already moved beyond that. The industry of bad actors is already attacking 2FA and very successfully in some cases. This actually came up for me recently in a more like popular level when I was working with like selling something on, I forget whether it was Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. And I was contacted by someone who was interested in what I was selling, right? They were expressing their interest, their urgency, so willing to do this thing. And in the midst of them checking out the product I was selling, they said that they wanted to verify that I was a human. And so they needed me to send back a 6-digit code that they were going to send to me. So then, of course, the next text I get is from some system sending me a 6-digit code. If I had given them the 6-digit code, they have effectively bypassed a 2FA setup. In this case, not for some system I already had set up, most likely. They would have been setting up something new. But they're triggering the 2FA back to my phone. They're getting themselves in so they can be me. That's social engineering. And it's social engineering using 2FA. So now the thing that I'm relying on for security, I'm used to using as a way to authenticate someone or a way to authenticate myself on a system. Someone is using social engineering to turn that back as an attack now and say, well, yeah, 2FA matters. So I'm going to verify you are human for this sale, right? We have to be aware that as technology progresses in a good way, bad actors are still active. Bad actors are still working with those new technologies as something they can attack to, something that they want to get past. If we're going to keep up, if we're going to even stay ahead, we have to be continually watchful, continually taking care that we are hardening our own IT operations. And quite frankly, to some degree, we have to take ourselves seriously enough to care about these things. When we try to pretend like just the fact that we exist as IT people means everyone's safe, we're not really taking it very seriously. We know that the lay of the land is not always a happy one, and we need to stare that in the face and do well with it.
Thanks for watching. Don't miss part 2 of this series coming up next.